Ron Paul wants to absolutely limit the government's role and would therefore shrink it drastically, downsizing its role tremendously in the lives of individuals and all affairs in the world abroad. For example, he would abolish the U.S. Department of Education, uh, Department of Energy, Department of Congress, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, that's FEMA there, that messed up with them hurricanes, the Interstate Commerce Commission, and the IRS, calling them unnecessary bureaucracies. Paul would severely reduce the role of CIA, reducing its function to strictly intelligence gathering. The only contradiction I've actually found with Ron Paul is that he's proposed bills which would have called for massive government spending, millions of dollars to restore a movie theater, and some pretty big subsidies for the shrimp industry. While certainly a contradiction, I think it falls far short of the evils I've seen with federal lobbying. He would eliminate operations, rather, like overthrowing foreign governments and assassinations. I think such policy, while it appears drastic, is actually quite reasonable. Government, and other groups for that matter, that are supposed to serve the public often end up creating more problems. Most often, money is spent on salaries for employees and services that are they're supposed to be, and the services that are supposed to be provided fall well short of stated goals. How come most of those folks in them tents in Haiti didn't get anywhere near what was pledged? How many of you, like me, have tried to go in the helping professions, trying to get a job, hoping to make the world a better place, and find yourselves lost in a quagmire of meetings that focus on policy, and you get lost in a bunch of jargon, but really never solve a damn thing, never change anything, right? My view here is that we oughtn't waste money and time with endless meetings and overinflated salaries, but should instead have small numbers of people focused intensely on providing services. I refer you back to my King of the World food, shelter, clothing for everybody policy. I can't imagine this is Ron Paul's view, but it damn sure is mine. And again, once more, I'm just a dumb comedian with little to no knowledge of the economy, but I think Paul's ideas about low taxes, scrapping the Federal Reserve, and aims to back money with something hard like gold are basically good. Indeed, Ron calls inflation the most insidious tax of all. Has great points here. With the Federal Reserve's ability to seemingly print money to infinity, each dollar becomes devalued every time more is printed. Not so bad for rich folks who have tons. Their purchasing power is diminished, but they can still buy lots of stuff because they have tons of cash. Poor folks, however, with little cash can buy even less due to their devalued dollars and become even poorer. One of the great things about libertarian economics, in my opinion, is there would be no billion-dollar bailouts of banks on taxpayers' salaries. Banks would simply be allowed to crumble. Now, some of you may argue here that such failure would have forced a depression and led ultimately to international societal collapse. And I'm not certain that would have been the case, but let's just say that was, right? If we didn't bail out them banks, $80 billion, whatever it is, $1 billion, that's absolutely what would have happened. Our society needs to be massively restructured. I gotta ask you, how crooked is it that if a few fat cats lose their dough, the masses are forced into starvation? The two major reasons I want every American and those abroad with American voting privileges to register Republican and vote for Ron Paul are his stances on civil liberties and his foreign policy. Paul supports gays' rights to marry, voted to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, voted against the Patriot Act in 2001, which enabled law enforcement agencies much greater power to search medical, financial, telephone, email, and other records if you're on that terror list, all in the name of making America safer against terrorism. Paul is right here to call these gross violations against freedom. He also opposes any idea of a military draft, is for the legal right to prostitution, ending the war on drugs, ending prohibition on all illegal drugs. He thinks, I think rightly, addiction should be treated as a medical issue and not a crime. He believes in personal responsibility, but that we should basically be able to do what we want with our own bodies, provided we don't hurt anybody else. I'm in agreement with all of this. The only matter I contend with here, though, is Paul's proposal of affirmative action. First off, I think rightly he states that viewing people as part of minority groups rather than individuals is inherently bigoted. I think that's right on. Unfortunately, though, as a person with cerebral palsy, I'm undoubtedly viewed as a member of that group, and such a view absolutely limits my opportunities in life. No question. I say that if the qualifications are basically equal, you must definitely favor the minority because the scales are tipped against him in far too many ways. Finally, let's examine Paul's foreign policy. Regarding trade, Ron Paul supports open free trade with other sovereign nations, opposes the embargo on Cuba, believing citizens should have a right to have relations with whomever they see fit, and government shouldn't be able to restrict this. He opposes agreements like NAFTA, though, North American Free Trade Agreement, because they serve special interest elites and don't really benefit citizens. I think this is sound, for what I know anyhow. Ron Paul is a non-interventionist, opposing all wars not related to direct and territorial self-defense. So he would have supported retaliation to the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, and did initially support retaliation in Afghanistan after the September 11th attacks, but is opposed to the nation-building entanglement that has resulted since, and wants to bring home the troops from all over the world as soon as possible. He voted against the Iraq War in 2003, by the way. Here's a really poignant quote. I love this quote quite a bit. There's nobody in the world that could possibly attack us today. We could defend this country with a few good submarines. If anybody dared touch us, we could wipe any country off the face of the earth within hours, and here we are, so intimidated, so insecure, and we're acting like such bullies that we have to attack third world nations that have no military and have no weapons. That's Ron Paul right there. And I think this is bang on, and that indeed America and the world at large is safer if the U.S. isn't killing people all over. I'm certain America would have many fewer enemies, and sure, you know what, there might still be a crazy few who would commit acts of terrorism, like, Columbine shooting, or even the odd suicide bomber. But if the States wasn't killing civilians in other parts of the world, I can't imagine near as many people would want to kill civilians over there. Downside I see to his non-intervention is that he pretty much rejects all foreign aid. Now, on the one hand, kind of like that NAFTA and some other things I mentioned, most often foreign aid serves government elites and really does nothing for the people who need it, but nonetheless, I have to disagree with his vote in 2007 to oppose military intervention to stop genocide in Sudan, arguing it was not in the U.S. national interest and overstepped the constitutional function of its military forces. I ask you here, should Hitler have been allowed to pursue his ethnic cleansing to his heart's desire? If you see someone beat an old lady, should you not step in and defend her? I suppose Ron Paul would probably say my examples are different because the former involves actions of government, while the latter involves actions of private citizens. I would respond, though, that in very few cases, one such being genocide, right is right, wrong is wrong, and we must always do our best to prevent wrong from winning out. Well, that's it, folks. I'd just like to say in conclusion that if you have American voting rights, please register Republican, help Ron Paul win leadership in November, and elect him president. Now, I'll grant you that if elected, it's not a guarantee he'll keep his promises, but I have hope. I'm convinced that his policies of freedom and peace make the world safer and more just. If, like me, you've been inspired by the international tide of revolution from the Arab Spring to Occupy Wall Street, where good people have sacrificed their lives to opposing tyrants and stepped up to challenge the crooked monetary system in order to ensure a better future for everyone, vote Ron Paul 2012. Mohamed Bouazizi's overwhelming courage in Tunisia has sparked a wave of righteousness that I'd like to see continue. Thanks a lot, everybody.